I'm Sanjay Srivastava. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for Genpact. And Genpact is a global professional services firm that drives digital transformation for large corporations. Across the body of work that we do, working for CIOs and with CIOs on large digital transformation initiatives, we've come back with a number of learnings over the years that we think are really interesting. And more recently, we worked with MIT and we pulled together a survey with MIT and Genpact of 500 CIOs. And we really try to get a sense for what's on top of mind. Where's the pulse of that group? And I thought as you looked at those two bodies of knowledge and you pulled it together, there's a few themes that came through. The first one was all around the role of the CIO and how much and how significantly it's evolving. And the second one was around the tools that CIOs are bringing to the trade, the components that they're utilizing to drive transformation that's evolving. And so I want to unpeel both of those together with us. Look, I think on the first one, the role of the CIO is changing, and many of us have sort of felt it and seen it. Clearly, digital transformation is a big driver of business competitive advantage for most corporations around the globe. And the role of the CIO in driving that is coming forth. But one of the things I frequently hear from CIOs that I work with is that technology is no longer the long pole in the tent. Of course, there's some nuances and there's some work that needs to get done to set up a data lake or to rig up a cloud infrastructure or to be able to deliver cutting edge analytics and artificial intelligence algorithms to drive business value. And there's work there. But really, it's not the hard part. The harder part is actually transformation. And so we use the word digital transformation very easily, but actually there are two halves of a whole, and digital is actually the easier part. Transformation is the much harder part. And we know this, but just intuitively what's happening is transformation is actually best achieved when you take four assets across a corporation. You look at people, you think through the process, you look at data, and you drive technology. And it's those four asset classes that you must simultaneously orchestrate, that you must programmatically manage. And when you do that, we're seeing corporations are driving true transformation results, not getting a project done, not getting a software implemented, not getting just digital done, but actually translating that into true transformation value. And that's really driving this focus on transformation. It's driving this focus on being able to think outside of just technology. And it's about driving and changing and evolving the role of the CIOs. So what we're finding, and the MIT Genpact survey shows this very clearly, is that there's almost three segments of CIOs that are coming through. There's a segment I'd like to call pilots. They're on the top of the game. They're driving transformation for their corporations and really thinking about new business models and using digital to enable that. There's a second set, let me call them co-pilots. And these are CIOs that are collaborating, that they are co-owning, that they're very closely working hand in hand with their business counterparts and stakeholders, and together building the model for the future, together transforming the business, together thinking through the end-to-end of the entire spectrum we talked about earlier. And then there's a third set, and I'm going to call them flight engineers. But these engineers are taking inputs, they're driving massive value delivery, taking direction from other business stakeholders and their leaders to do that. And it's super interesting because if you think about those three groups, and I'm going to pull up the data that came through the survey results, 22% of CIOs we spoke with that was surveyed are actually in the pilots category. 61% are in the co-pilots category, and only 17% are engineers, if you will. Now you go back a few years, and we all know what that picture looked like. And what's coming through there is now the fact that the role of IT and the role of the CIO is going from being value delivery engines, from running the operations, to co-creators of new business models, of generators of new growth, of co-designing business models that deliver more sticky experiences. And it's the shift from value delivery to co-creation. It's this move of the game that's going up the value stream. That's what's happening. And it's very clearly evident, both in the results we see through the MIT Genpact CIO survey, as well as all of the learnings we've had across the work we do with large corporation CIOs. I think the other takeaway, and it's important to reflect on, is look, the tools of the trade are changing. The components you bring are now evolving. And what used to be sort of standard in the norm a few years ago is no longer the case. We're finding, first off, that enterprise architectures themselves are changing. The center of gravity is evolving, that the old system of records, the core pieces of technology that were the system of records, whether it's a core banking system or an ERP, they're getting slimmer. And I call them the slim core, but they're slimming and getting smaller, if you will. And the desire to actually meet this new capability, drive new functionality, deliver the new growth, and translating that into new business and therefore technology capabilities that need to be built is actually coming outside of the slim core. So what's happening with enterprise architectures is the core is getting slimmer. You're having a ring of data and a foundation for data and analytics is the first sort of ring. It's a concentric circle, if you will. Then outside of that, you have a ring of systems of engagements, of SaaS solutions that bridge the gap between that slimming core and the business reality of what's needed tomorrow. And increasingly, they're quickly deployable, they're agile, they're API integrated, and they're great to get off the ground. And then finally, we see the third concentric circle, and that's around all of the innovative projects that fall to microservices and allow large corporation CIOs to balance the need to centrally govern and manage at the core, but actually allow for innovation and experimentation at the edge. And microservices is a very, very good way of delivering that, particularly with a defined framework for a reference framework for the architecture. And as this evolves, we think the tools that CIOs are bringing in, and we're seeing this in the survey, has changed. So the things to think about now are cloud and hyperautomation, number one, data and analytics and AI, number two, and then the whole bit about the future of work and the impact of talent, of thinking through talent, skilling, and just enablement. And so let me just unpeel them very quickly. I'll share some results that we saw through these survey results of the work we did. 40% of CIOs, they're saying that automation is helping their organizations adapt to changing business conditions. And it's top of list, top of their minds for that reason. Roughly a similar set of CIOs basically said that cloud is the key enabler for them. And so we see this real focus on hyperautomation and on cloud. In fact, 100% of CIOs reported back that they're already in their cloud journey or starting their cloud journey within the next 12 months. And if you really segment the data and go one click deeper, what we learned is pilots, those CIOs that are actually on the top of the game, they're the ones that are innovating with cloud. Co-pilots are actually modernizing their application stack, delivering new capability, using hyperscalers and the composable services to make that happen. And the engineers are actually in the catch-up mode. And so that's a really interesting sort of sub-segmentation we see around where people are in the cloud journeys. The second one, as I said, is everything around data. And then the analytics and AI come on top of that. And I think there the focus has been on how do you build a foundation of data that gives you the rights to differentiate, the basis to drive value and long-term differentiation. But it isn't just about the technology. It isn't about just getting it right at the core. It's actually about culture in the larger organization, and it's about data literacy of the larger ecosystem. And then pushing the use of AI, because you have to harvest all of the data to drive intelligence that drives insights, that drives actions, that delivers results. And you have to get that right. So 82% of the CIOs I found this is really quite interesting. They're really saying that they're spending a lot of time building across the company a culture of data-driven decision-making. This bit about data curiosity, this idea of data literacy, this ability for business users, for a subject matter expertise to blend their core knowledge of the domain they're in and then bring in the right data to be able to drive the analytics to make better business decisions. That's been the core of getting it right. And so there's a lot of work on actually expanding the footprint of how we think about data. And it's not just the technology game, it's actually about data literacy, and it's about the culture around data. 53% of pilot CIOs are prioritizing AI and machine learning. And that we think is an amazing insight. It's their highest investment priority. And we know the logic behind that. We know that AI is now in many areas human grade. And you think about pattern analysis through and finding weak links in data across large bodies of data. I mean, AI is above human grade. Language processing is now actually at human grade. computer vision is almost to human grade. And so you start looking at these capabilities, you look at the cost of delivering that. Top of the game CIOs are realizing the potential that AI has and the ability to utilize that to drive insights from that data foundation they're building and really differentiate. So that's coming through. And then 43% of CIOs are upskilling employees. They're really working tirelessly to get this data literacy in place and get the organization on that journey. And so we found that to be fascinating. We also, by the way, find that to be very consistent with what we do internally inside our own corporation and where we're seeing the rest of the industry go. And that brings me to the last one, the third sort of new tool to the trade. And that's the whole bit about future of work. And there's a lot of insights in the survey that came through around talent and the shape of talent that's going to be required. It's the skilling of the employees and then enabling them. And so, I'll give you a data point from the survey. 49% of CIOs are telling us that they're going to have to rely on external providers to help them with talent because they will not have the sufficient required talent in-house. So that's super interesting. It talks to the key and critical role talent and therefore technologies and therefore digital is going to play in the evolution of corporations to come. 50% of CIOs are saying that when they go to hiring new talent, hiring college graduates, that they're going to look for business knowledge. And this is very insightful because now we're talking about the intersection of business and tech. We're talking about domain and digital. Very simply, we're talking about finance and accounting as an example and machine learning as an example. And I think there's a realization that to truly harvest the value of digital, that you have to contextualize it, that you have to put it in the domain, that you have to understand the nuances of the industry, then you have to label the data for the domain it's coming from. And all of that requires this bilinguality, this notion of understanding one domain and understanding enough for tech, and then exploring, investing, and exploiting that intersection to drive value. And what's been amazing is the evolution of CIOs on actually trying to unlock that potential. So I leave you with this, in the summary of everything we've learned in the work we do across corporations now for a few years on digital transformation. And in the most recent work we did with MIT, just surveying and really trying to get a sense for the pulse of the market, pulse of the mind of a CIO. What we're finding is that there's a real evolution that's happening in the role, the fundamental construct of the role of the job of a CIO. And then we're seeing that there's new tools in the trade. There's the emergence of cloud and data and AI and the future work as large, strong investment themes that they're focusing on. And so what that tells us is this is a time like no other, that the opportunity and the potential is there for all of us. And what we're learning is that those that move quickly and evolve from that engineer to that co-pilot to the pilot role are probably best set up to harvest, to benefit, and to leverage all that we have to offer and gain from it. I leave you to think through that, to double click into some of the details, and to probe us as we work together to a better digital transformation future. Thank you.